Welcome back to Occam's Razor. We're doing a follow-up on the Liberal ministers breaking their oath to Canada in the performance of their duties as ministers in their department. Now, 8 days ago, CBC had done an article on one of the very same RCMP officers who had put out this letter this week. So it's not that it was really not covered, it just had started to be covered at the time. And obviously, when this story broke in CBC, it's obvious that the officer in this story, Paul McNamara, I don't think he was too happy with the results of the lack of coverage from this one story because it quickly vanished from the mainstream media. Here's a short clip from Northern Perspective, linked below. Please watch the entire thing back on their channel. And afterwards, we will read a couple of related articles, which are rather well done.
This is the kind of intelligence, mishap that has serious consequences. And intelligence is not evidence. Intelligence is, I'm going to steal Pete's thunder here because it's something that resonates with me. But when you have a clear glass of water and you put a little drop of food coloring into that water, you've poisoned that pure glass of water. And that intelligence, you can't get that back out of the water. It stays tainted. So I put a drop of red dye in the water and it goes bright red. I can dilute it by adding more intelligence to it, but I can never get that little piece of dye out of that water. And that's exactly how this transpired. And so my mission, until I met Pete, my personal mission at that time was to find the truth, which was the undercover world, to seek the truth. And I can tell you, not one agency in this country has told me the truth. Not one minister has wanted to engage in seeking out that truth. And when this intelligence is wrong, it has disastrous consequences, as I found out personally and as Pete has found out. And my mission is to make sure this does not happen to another Canadian, because it's not right and it's not supposed to be the Canadian way.
I know exactly how McNamara feels. RCMP whistleblowers accused members of Mark Carney's inner circle of security breaches and surveillance. A serving RCMP sergeant and retired national security detective accused Trudeau-era ministers, and now Mark Carney's inner circle, of illegal surveillance and intelligence cover-ups in a stunning open letter dated April 12, 2025, which allegations are unverified, went viral yesterday. RCMP Sergeant Peter Merrifield and retired National Security Detective Paul McNamara have accused a slate of former and current Liberal cabinet ministers, including members of Mark Carney's leadership circle, of allowing and covering up serious breaches of Canadian national security, the Charter of Rights, and the public trust. The letter addressed directly to Prime Minister Mark Carney lays out explosive allegations supported, they say, by documentation and communications records. The authors are demanding Carney remove specific individuals from his campaign and inner circle to demonstrate that he will not inherit or excuse the Liberal Party's pattern of evasive and abusive power under Justin Trudeau. Open quote, you are presenting your financial background as the requisite and relevant experience to lead a nation, they write. Perhaps it was your lack of political and government experience that saw you mishandle the extremely serious matter with your current Member of Parliament, Paul Chang. He openly called for the abduction, close quote. The letter references former Liberal MP Paul Chiang, who stepped down in disgrace after it was revealed he told a Chinese language audience that they could claim a $1 million bounty from the Chinese government by delivering Conservative candidate Joe Tay, a Canadian citizen, to the Chinese consulate in Toronto. Merrifield and McNamara did not mince words, open quote. MP Chang not only acted without integrity as Member of Parliament and former police officer, but he also called for the abduction and handover of a Canadian citizen and political opponent to a foreign country that the Liberal government has criticized for human rights violation. They go further, directly accusing Carney of failing his first major leadership test. Open quote. This unparalleled action in Canadian history was your first public test as a leader. You hesitated and did not publicly demonstrate the recognition of the seriousness of the offense. Close quote. Trudeau-era officials named and shamed, all 9 of them. The letter then shifts to its most consequential section, a list of 9 former and current ministers, some of whom now work in Carney's office, who the authors accuse of either enabling, ignoring, or directly participating in unlawful actions. Among the most damning claims, Marco Mendicino is accused of having failed to act in protecting Canadians abroad from potential arrest and detention, and for permitting breaches of law, breaches of process, and breaches of policy by both CSIS and the RCMP. Dominic Leblanc, they allege, failed to address breaches against Canadians with improper use of electronic spyware by CSIS and the RCMP, including breaches against labor unions. Bill Blair is accused of authorizing extreme powers for CSIS to undertake inappropriate actions against innocent Canadians and permitting violations of the ministerial directive on national security operations in sensitive sectors. Anita Anand, Anita Anand, allegedly failed to intercede and address improper use of spyware by the RCMP against a labor union executive during a period of collective bargaining and unfair labor practice filing. They also accuse Melanie Joly and Arif Viranni of failing to act after the public release of protected Section 38 national security documents without redaction, which they claim exposed Canadian operatives and their families to retaliation from the Chinese state. Open quote, these individuals, now and forever, have a target on their backs, close quote. Merrifield and McNamara claim these failures led to tangible threats against Canadians who were caught in the middle of international espionage between China and Canada. Open quote, several innocent Canadians have been placed at risk of direct retaliation by Chinese foreign intelligence. These innocent individuals now and forever have a target on their backs, close quote. They argue that had ministers acted when first informed in 2022, this exposure never would have happened. The letter ends with the final challenge to Carney. Open quote. If indeed you are presenting Canadians a choice of something new, then take action now rather than making election promises to look into it later. Close quote. They tell Carney that surrounding himself with the failed engineers of the past will only prove that his leadership is a continuation, not a break, from the rot of the Trudeau years. Who are Merrifield and McNamara? Peter Merrifield is a veteran RCMP sergeant who served on the executive board of the National Police Federation, the official RCMP union. He has previously filed lawsuits against the force for political retaliation and harassment. He alleges he was targeted by spyware, in brackets, ODIT, close bracket, the same kind used to track terrorists during union negotiations with the federal government. Detective Paul McNamara, retired, a seasoned national security investigator, has worked with Merrifield for several years compiling documentary evidence of alleged abuses by CSIS and the RCMP. He co-authored the letter claims they are in possession of documents, communication records, and evidence to back every charge. Final word. So now the stakes are laid bare. This election isn't just about policy. It's not about carbon taxes or housing slogans or who can shake the most hands in Brampton. It's about whether Canada is still a country governed by the rule of law or a decaying shell run by insiders, spooks, and bureaucrats who answer to no one. Because Mark Carney has a choice: lead with integrity or carry water for the same liberal machine that gave us surveillance on union reps, CSIS interference, and national security scandals buried under layers of Ottawa spin. And Canadians have a choice too. If the allegations are true, do we want more of the same? More willful blindness, more gaslighting, more foreign interference and media complicity dressed up as safety and stability? Or are we finally ready to demand something different? This election is a referendum on accountability, and for once, the line is crystal clear. Choose wisely, because this time the country is not going to survive on autopilot. This article written by Dan Knight, and he has a subscription site called The Opposition. Let's give that a click, see what Dan has, and he is, there he is, The Opposition. Check out his site. Next we have this piece here by Who wrote this? Ah, Mac himself. Mac's opinion. Why the damaging RCMP open letter to Mark Carney matters. What does Mac have to say? Mark Carney's bid for a fourth Liberal term is a facade of leadership obscured by distrust and scandals shown in this RCMP open letter to him. Surrounding himself with flawed minister, Carney embodies a continuation of misconduct, failing to act decisively on serious breaches of law and personal safety. Canadians deserve accountability, reject the Liberals, and demand genuine change. Why Canadians shouldn't trust Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. A betrayal of trust and the rule of law, an RCMP open letter to Mark Carney. Now, he posts a letter here. We've also posted a link to all this documentation in my prior video. Also, the embedded link to North Perspectives full interview with the two officers also has links to the document, and he also shows them in his video. As Canada approaches the 2025 federal election, Mark Carney, the new leader of the Liberal Party, is asking Canadians for a fourth term to lead the nation, presenting himself as a fresh face with a financial background. Carney claims he's the right person to guide Canada forward, but beneath the polished promises lies a troubling reality. Carney's leadership is surrounded by a team of Liberal Party members whose actions have betrayed the trust of Canadians, undermining the rule of law and put innocent lives at risk. The article exposes the convictions and failures of key Liberal Party figures handpicked by Carney to remain in his inner circle and explains why Canadians should think twice before giving the Liberals another chance. A leader untested, surrounded by failure, Mark Carney stepped into Liberal Party leadership with no prior political experience, banking on his reputation as a former Bank of Canada governor to win over voters. Yet, his first major test as leader, handling the scandal involving Liberal MP Paul Chang, revealed a troubling lack of judgment. Chang, a sitting Liberal MP and former police officer, openly called for the abduction and handover of Canadian citizen to foreign government, which was criticized by the Liberals for human rights abuses. This unprecedented act in Canadian history demanded swift action from Carney to show he respects the rule of law. Instead, he hesitated, failing to publicly acknowledge the seriousness of Chang's actions or take decisive steps to address them. This wasn't just one-off mistake. Carney has chosen to keep a roster of Liberal cabinet ministers, past and present, in his prime minister's office, despite their documented failures to protect Canadians and uphold the law. These individuals, named in an open letter by retired police officers Sergeant Peter Merrifield and Detective Paul McNamara, have been accused of serious breaches of national security, misuse of spyware, and violations of Canadian rights. By keeping these figures close, Carney is signaling that he is willing to overlook their failures for the sake of political loyalty. This alone raises serious questions about the ability to lead with integrity. Liberal Party's Hall of Shame. The open letter dated April 12, 2025 lists 9 Liberal Party members whose actions have endangered Canadians and eroded trust in the government. These are not baseless accusations. They are backed by evidence, including documents and communication records that paint a damning picture of negligence and misconduct. Let's break down who these Liberal figures are and what they've done. Marco Mendicino, as the former Minister of Public Safety, Mendicino failed to protect Canadians abroad from potential arrest and detention by foreign governments. He ignored directives from then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office to address misconduct at the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Under his watch, both agencies breached laws, policies, and processes, putting Canadians at risk. Dominic Leblanc, another former public safety minister. Leblanc allowed CSIS and RCMP to misuse electronic spyware against Canadians, violating their charter rights. He failed to hold these agencies accountable for operating in sensitive sectors like labor unions and ignored critical national security information withheld by CSIS from an active RCMP investigation. Bill Blair. As Public Safety Minister, Blair authorized CSIS to take extreme actions against innocent Canadians, breaching ministerial directives and the Canadian Charter rights. His decision enabled unchecked abuses of power that compromised citizens' safety. 4. David McGuinty, as chair of the National Security and Intelligence Committee and Parliamentarians NCI COP, and later Public Safety Minister, McGuinty failed to address CSIS withholding of critical information from the RCMP. He also neglected to protect Canadians' charter rights and ignored risks to Canadians, citizens abroad. Anita Anand. Anita. As president of the Treasury Board, Anand failed to stop the RCMP's improper use of spyware against labor union executive during collective bargaining. She allowed the Treasury Board to engage in bad faith negotiations, knowing serious legal breaches had occurred. Steve Mackinnon, as labor minister, Mackinnon ignored RCMP breaches during labor activities, failing to uphold Canadian charter rights or investigate violations in sensitive sectors like union. Melanie Joly, as Foreign Affairs Minister, Joly did nothing to address safety risks to Canadians traveling to China, even after RCMP and Public Prosecution Service of Canada, PPSC, publicly released unredacted national security documents that put lives in danger. Arif Viranni, as Justice Minister and Attorney General, Viranni similarly failed to act on the release of these sensitive documents, leaving Canadians vulnerable to retaliation by foreign intelligence agencies. Oh, I'm going to miss his little sidestep in Parliament when he's talking. He's always going back and forth. Chrystia Freeland, Mr. Speaker. As Deputy Minister, Freeland ignored reports of labor rights violations, misuse of spyware, and charter breaches, failing to intervene despite her senior role in the Liberal government. These Liberal Party members, many of whom Carney has chosen to keep in his orbit, have been accused of neglecting their duties, breaking laws, and endangering Canadians. Their inaction over 2 years allowed innocent Canadians to be targeted by Chinese intelligence agencies, with some now facing lifelong risks due to exposed covert operation. This isn't just incompetence, it's a betrayal of the public trust. The spyware scandal, a violation of Canadians' rights. At the heart of this scandal is the misuse of on-device investigative technology, a powerful spyware tool used by CSIS and RCMP. This technology, meant for serious cases like terrorism or imminent threats, was deployed against Canadians who posed no danger, including Sergeant Peter Merrifield, a serving RCMP officer and union leader. Merrifield, a witness in an RCMP investigation, had his union cell phone targeted during collective bargaining, a clear violation of labor rights and mistrial directives. The RCMP knew Merrifield's personal phone was the one relevant to their investigation, yet they deliberately targeted his union devices, accessing privileged bargaining materials. This wasn't an isolated incident. The RCMP also mishandled audit deployment, targeting incorrect phone numbers, and compromising innocent Canadians' personal data. And as pointed out by Ryan at Northern Perspective, targeting incorrect phone numbers means that innocent Canadians, as stated here, had their phones targeted by the RCMP and they didn't know about it. CSIS, meanwhile, used audit to spy on Merrifield and others, violating the privacy of foreign dignitaries. Foreign dignitaries, imagine that. Cabinet ministers and even the Prime Minister. These actions enable Liberal ministers like Mendicino, Leblanc, and Blair show a reckless disregard for Canadians' rights and safety. And I wonder which of these foreign dignitaries were targeted. And I wonder if their countries know that our ministers violated their representatives of their countries' phones. National security leak putting lives at risk. Perhaps the most alarming revelation is the RCMP and PPSC's public release of unredacted national security documents in October 2024. These documents, which violated Section 38 of Canada Evidence Act, exposed Canadians involved in covert intelligence operations in China. The leak identified individuals who now face cyber attacks and physical retaliation from Chinese intelligence agencies. Despite warnings from Merrifield and McNamara to Liberal ministers like Joly, Viranni, and Freeland, no action was taken to prevent this unprecedented breach. This failure stems from a botched CSIS operation during the Meng Wanzhou crisis, where the agency betrayed its own covert agent and fed false intelligence to the RCMP, the State Department, and the Prime Minister's office. The RCMP acted on this misinformation, wrongly linked innocent Canadians to Chinese interference, even dragged the Conservative Party into the mess with baseless accusations. The Liberal government refusal to address these breaches has left Canadians vulnerable and exposed, and we see once again Liberals abusing the systems against their political opponents. Why Mark Carney can't be trusted. Mark Carney has had a chance to prove he's different from the Liberal leaders of the past 9 years. He could have acted swiftly to remove Paul Chang and the named ministers from his team, showing Canadians he prioritizes integrity over politics. Instead, he's chosen to surround himself with the same liberal figures responsible for these scandals. By keeping Mendicino, Leblanc, Blair, and others in his circle, Carney is endorsing their failures and signaling that he's more interested in power than accountability. Carney's lack of political experience is glaringly evident in his handling of these issues. His hesitation to act on Chang's actions and his decision to retain ministers accused of serious misconduct suggests he's either unaware of the gravity of their actions or unwilling to confront them. Either way, it's a red flag for Canadians who expect a leader to put the country first. Why Canadians should say no to a fourth Liberal term. The Liberal Party has had 9 years to prove they can govern with integrity, protect Canadians, and respect the rule of law. Instead, they delivered a string of scandals, from spyware abuses to the national security leaks that put lives at risk and eroded trust in government. Mark Carney may promise something new, but his actions tell a different story. By keeping discredited Liberal ministers in his office, he's showing that his leadership is just a continuation of the same old failures. Canadians deserve better. They deserve a government that respects their rights, protects their safety, and holds itself accountable. Voting for the Liberals in 2025 means endorsing a party that has repeatedly failed to deliver on these basic principles. It means trusting a leader who surrounds himself with people like Mark Mendicino, Dominic Leblanc, and Chrystia Freeland, whose inaction has endangered citizens. It means risking another term of broken promises and betrayed trust. The evidence is clear. The Liberal Party under Mark Carney cannot be trusted to lead Canada. Sergeant Merrifield and Detective McNamara wrote, "It is never wrong to do the right thing and to earn the trust and confidence of Canadians. Carney has failed to do the right thing, and Canadians should respond by voting for change. Say no to a fourth Liberal term. Canada deserves a government that puts its people first." Conclusion. Call for accountability. The time for complacency is past. Canada stands at a crossroads, and the path forward requires courage from its citizens. The evidence laid bare in this article is not just a collection of accusations, it is a clarion call for the accountability and change. Mark Carney and the Liberal Party have consistently demonstrated a troubling commitment to their own political ambitions and over the safety and trust of Canadians. This betrayal cannot go unchallenged. We approach the 2025 federal election. Canadians must stand united in demanding transparency, integrity, and the respect for the rule of law. Let us not allow another term of incompetence and negligence. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to ensure that our government prioritizes people over political loyalty. What do you think about this situation? How do you feel about the corruption within the Liberal Party of Canada? We invite you to share your thoughts and comments below here on Mac's page. Additionally, blah, 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 blah. So, very good piece. You can see that the messaging is quite the same. Although Mac is obviously a little more pro-conservative, or that is like don't vote liberal. We can see the article is trying to maintain some semblance, but regardless, you're looking at this facts. This is not good at all. Thanks for staying over to the end, for listening to me jab and just read some articles. Watch, share, subscribe. See you next time.